On the bench today, we've got the Funsky Mantis, and this retro-looking buggy is on a platform we've never seen on the channel before, and I'm really curious to see if this thing is actually any good, if it's built well, if it's durable, and why it's a high center of gravity when it's a buggy. Let's find out. First of all, as you can see, this is a brushless buggy. Funsky is calling this 1/16 scale. It's pretty similar in size to the new Typhon Grom. It's got an all-in-one ESC receiver and a little brushless motor hiding underneath this cover. We'll take this cover off in just a minute. It comes with a 2S 1500 milliamp hour lithium ion battery, though this is 3S compatible according to Funsky. We're gonna be trying that out. It's got some cool turbine retro wheels, and these tires are fairly stiff. I'm kind of curious to see how this retro spike design works off-road. Moving to the front, we can see we've got aluminum shock towers with metal plastic composite shocks. These are not oil filled, but we'll see if we can put some oil in them. I'm pretty skeptical given the fact that I see screws here holding the shock caps on. We've got steel CVDs in the front and dog bones in the rear. This is an all plastic chassis. And like I said, this is a high center of gravity, which is kind of strange for a buggy, but it might make for an interesting bashing experience. Front and rear arms are different and they feel pretty stiff for a smaller buggy like this, which makes me a little bit nervous. We'll see how durable it is in just a few minutes. We've got a nice metal front skid plate. Taking one of these wheels off, we can see they're standard 12 millimeter. We've got plastic hexes and a reasonable looking front suspension and steering. Like I said, this is my first experience with a Funsky car and my first experience with this type of platform. They do have a monster truck on the same basic platform, which I suspect is going to be the same car, just with a different body, different tires, and minus the rear wing. In the rear, we can see we've got a fairly standard hub setup, though I'm a little bit confused about these pins because they don't seem to be retained by anything. Let's check the manual. Unfortunately, this manual is not a lot of help. There's some parts in here, but I don't see those pins listed. Along with the manual, we do get some extra hubs and knuckles. Along with that, we do get a charger for the battery and some stickers, which we'll put on this buggy body here in just a minute. Okay, the only thing I can think is that these pins press in. Let's try a little bit harder. Okay, there we go. Yeah, these pins just press in and they're knurled on one end to retain them. That's the first time I've seen that style on an RC car. Very curious to see if those will stay in or if they're gonna fall out while we're bashing. Let's get this top cover off and take a closer look at the electronics. This is my first experience with a car on this specific platform, but we know a lot of these companies share vehicle platforms, so if you've seen this same platform from another company, let me know what company that is and what car they use it on. Looks like we need to take these body mounts off before we can get the cover off. This definitely looks like it's going to be one of those cars that's got a bunch of different size screws, so make sure you pay attention to where they go. Let's see if we can get this cover off now. There we go. Okay, so this cover appears to hold in the motor mount, the spur gear, and the steering system. Looks like we've got a metal spur and pinion, which is a nice thing to see, and a metal drive shaft down the center. The motor is a Surpass Hobby 2845 4200 kV, which seems appropriately sized for this little car. They've got some grease here between the spur and pinion, which should be okay because it's fairly well sealed up in here. The servo is a standard 3-wire, and it appears to be a micro size. Looking down in here, it appears as though this is a plastic gear servo, and it has a servo saver built into it. And since it seems like we're only a couple screws away from taking one of these differentials out, let's take a look at one of those. These shocks are going to be in the way, so might as well go ahead and take one of those off and see if we can put some fluid in it. A lot of times you can put fluid in these shocks, sometimes you can't. If not, maybe we'll put some grease in them just to give them a little bit more damping. At this price point, I think we should have fluid-filled shocks, especially since this is the Pro version with the brushless drivetrain, but let's see what we can do. Okay, yeah, it looks like this cap's held on with a screw. I have to say, this is the first time I've ever seen this. And no, we're definitely not going to be able to put any fluid in here. And I don't think I want to put grease in here either because there's no seal down here and that grease is just going to come right out and make a mess. Fortunately, these shocks seem pretty generic in size and design, so you could probably get a set of oil-filled shocks for these pretty inexpensively. It's like we need to take both these shocks off to get the differential out. And this differential does appear to be all metal on the outside. However, this gear looks like it's cast zinc, which isn't the most durable thing in the world, especially when combined with a sintered steel pinion gear. But we do have all steel CVDs. This buggy does also appear to be running ball bearings throughout. Let's see if these internal gears are plastic or metal. Speaking of internal differential gears, it appears as though Arrma recently released an updated version of their Grom differentials. They have new stock differentials that are going to be going into the Typhon Grom and the Granite Grom. They look very similar to the ones that were there before, but they've got steel internal differential gears. I've got a set on order, and we'll be getting them installed and tested as soon as they get in. I'm curious to see how they hold up. In my experience, the internal gears really aren't the weakest point on them. It's the little tabs that the plastic output cups have, and those don't appear to have been changed, but we'll have to see if they've updated the entire design when we get them. Make sure you get subscribed so you don't miss that. Inside here, we've got a grease-filled differential with all metal gears. All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and put all this together, get this battery charged. Let's see how fast this thing is on 2S, and it looks like the drivetrain's gonna be able to handle 3S, so we'll definitely be trying it on that as well. Of course, before we see how fast this is, we've got to make it as fast as possible with some stickers. I do appreciate the fact that Funsky didn't put stickers on from the factory. It's nice to be able to put the stickers on that you want, and a lot of these companies just put a bunch of ridiculous greebling on these cars anyway. That doesn't really make any sense. So we'll just put a few stickers on here, like I said, for maximum speed. And then we've got one big sticker that goes on the rear wing that I'm certain I'm going to do a perfect job on. Okay, well, that's better than the sticker jobs I normally do. Let's go see how fast this thing is. All right, first let's check the responsiveness of the radio. Steering feels okay. Throttle feels good too. Let's see how fast it is. Not too bad. Give her one more try. All right, let's bring it in. All right, 21 miles an hour. That's not too bad for this little car on 2S. I think it'll be quite a bit more powerful on 3S though. Let's see how she bashes. Well, so far, guys, this thing's actually surprisingly decent. It handles pretty well. The transmitter it comes with is reasonably responsive. Definitely better than the transmitters on some other cheap cars that I've had. It's held up pretty well. These shocks have kind of gotten bound up with some dirt, so now they don't bounce quite as much. Everything seems to be holding up fine internally. However, the box says this ESC will do 3S, so we're gonna put a 3S battery in it. Now, I don't recommend you do this because the KV on this motor is pretty high, and we do risk blowing up this motor, but I wanna see what this thing can do with some more power because it doesn't really have a lot of air control right now, and I want to take it off the big ramp, so let's do that. Okay guys, on 3S, this thing is surprisingly fun, but before we talk about that, I have a little bit of a public service announcement. This thing, along with a lot of these cars, come with these little USB battery chargers, and I want to recommend that you don't use these. Even if you buy a cheaper charger that has a screen and lets you monitor your battery charging, I would strongly recommend doing that over one of these. And here's why. I couldn't find my adapter to charge this battery, so I went ahead and used this, and it charged for hours. Fortunately, I was able to monitor the voltage with my multimeter to see what was going on, and it basically got fairly close to being fully charged and then just sat there never completing. But these things aren't super reliable, and the worst part about it is you have no idea what's going on. So it could have just been sitting there for hours overcharging this battery, and if these things get significantly overcharged, they can blow up. Buying a decent charger, even when you're first getting into this hobby, is one of the most important things you can do. Okay, to the Mantis. I'm really happy with this thing. It's very, very cool. It looks neat. It's high center of gravity, so it's a bit more capable than most buggies of this size. It's also got a bit wider track than most buggies because this platform is based on their monster truck platform, so it doesn't roll over quite as easily. I think this wing is too high. They should lower this wing down, bring it in, and that would help a lot. I might just take this wing off entirely. Maybe 3D print a little bumper for back here. Other than that, it took some pretty good hits and held together just fine. It jumps better than a lot of small cars like these do, especially on 3S, and the system seems to be able to handle 3S just fine. Again, though, I wouldn't recommend it just because this thing isn't designed for 3S. You can tell by the KV of the motor. But of course, if you blew up the motor, you're only talking about $10, maybe $15 to get a replacement motor, so it's not that big of a deal. The interior seems reasonably well protected from dirt and debris. You can see the exterior of this is disgusting, even though I've already blown it off, but the interior stayed fairly good. Transmitter isn't terrible, it's responsive, and it has decent range with this 2-in-1 receiver. And overall, for the $90 you can get this for after coupon, I've got a coupon down in the description. It's not an affiliate link, so I don't get any kickbacks on it. It's just a discount for you. But for that 90 bucks, this might be something to look at if you like the way that it looks, because I like the way that it drives. Speaking of how things drive, I think you're going to enjoy the driving we do in these videos.